I learned the truth about my husband on a Tuesday afternoon in the quietest room of our house, the room he liked to call his study but never actually used. Sunlight was coming through the narrow window in thin stripes, dust floating in the air like it had nowhere else to go, and I remember thinking how strange it was that a place meant for reflection felt so abandoned. My name is Mara Ellison, and for 12 years I was married to the man everyone in our town called Pastor Luke. To the church, he was Luke Ellison, the youth pastor with the warm smile, the steady voice, the man who hugged grieving parents and preached about integrity like it was oxygen. To me, he was my husband, the man who prayed over our meals and kissed my forehead before bed. Or, at least, that's who I thought he was. That Tuesday, I was looking for a spare charger. That was it. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious, just a charger. Luke had texted me that morning asking if I could check his desk because he'd forgotten it before heading to the church for staff meeting. I remember smiling when I read the message, thinking how scattered he could be sometimes, always running late for something holy. I opened the top drawer, found old sermon notes, pens with the church logo, a Bible with folded corners. Then I opened the second drawer. That's where the silence changed. There was a second phone, not the one he carried every day, not the one I knew the passcode to. A cheap black device with a cracked screen turned off. My stomach tightened before my brain caught up. I told myself there was a reasonable explanation. There always is. Until there isn't. I turned it on, no lock screen, no passcode, like he never expected anyone to look. The messages loaded slowly, and then all at once, like a door being kicked in. Names I didn't recognize, casinos, sports betting apps, transactions, bars, late-night check-ins, photos that made my hands shake so badly I had to sit down on the floor. Luke, drunk. Luke, laughing with women whose faces were half cut out of the frame. Luke, texting things no youth pastor should ever say, no husband should ever think. I didn't cry at first. I went numb, the kind of numb that feels clean and dangerous at the same time. I kept scrolling, like if I reached the end, it would stop hurting. It didn't. There were months of it, years, dates lined up with nights he told me he was counseling teens, praying with parents, attending conferences, gambling debts, alcohol charges, a hotel receipt from a city 2 hours away dated the same weekend he preached a sermon about faithfulness and temptation. I sat there for a long time, long enough for the sun to move across the room, long enough for the house to feel unfamiliar. When Luke came home that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the second phone placed neatly in front of me. He froze in the doorway, just for a second, but it was enough. That was the moment I knew everything. He didn't ask how I found it. He didn't ask what I'd seen. He just looked tired. "Mara," he said quietly, like he was already disappointed in me for discovering him. "We can talk about this." I asked him one question. One. How long? He exhaled and sat down across from me, hands folded like he was about to pray. "It's complicated." That was his answer. Not sorry, not I was wrong. Complicated. That night, he told me pieces of the truth, carefully measured, like someone rationing food. He said he struggled. He said ministry was hard. He said the pressure was unbearable. He said God forgives. He didn't say he lied. He didn't say he betrayed me. He didn't say he endangered the kids who trusted him. I went to bed alone that night, and he slept on the couch. Not because I asked him to, but because he said he needed space to reflect. I stared at the ceiling until morning, listening to the house creak, wondering how many times I'd prayed next to a man who was already somewhere else. Over the next week, I didn't confront anyone. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell the church. I watched. I listened. I paid attention in a way I never had before. Luke continued his routine. Early mornings, late nights, smiling at the grocery store, laughing with church members who told him how lucky I was to have such a godly husband. He preached that Sunday about honesty. I sat in the front row, hands folded in my lap, and felt something inside me harden into resolve. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to be the hysterical wife who ruined a good man's reputation. I was going to let the truth speak in its own language. Documentation. Over the next 3 weeks, I became meticulous. I copied everything from the second phone: screenshots, dates, times, receipts. I cross-referenced his credit card statements. I pulled bank records. I saved security footage from our home showing the nights he left at midnight and returned at dawn. I found emails he'd forgotten to delete. I didn't add commentary. I didn't dramatize. I just organized. Luke noticed my distance, of course. He asked if I was okay. He told me he loved me. He suggested counseling. He prayed out loud for our marriage, holding my hands like a performance meant for an invisible audience. I let him. The elder board of our church was made up of 6 men, men who trusted Luke, men who'd hired him, promoted him, defended him when parents complained he was too strict, too intense, too involved, men who believed in restoration, forgiveness, and handling things quietly. I knew that if I walked into that room accusing him, they'd circle the wagons. They'd ask me to protect the ministry. They'd suggest prayer and discretion. So I didn't walk in. I emailed. 3 days before Sunday service, I sent a single email to each elder from my personal account. No subject line, just a sentence. I believe you need to see this before Sunday. Attached was a folder. Inside it, labeled clearly, were subfolders: gambling, alcohol, inappropriate conduct, timeline. I included a note at the top of the timeline. All dates correspond with church events, sermons, and counseling sessions. Then I waited. I didn't call. I didn't follow up. On Saturday night, Luke rehearsed his sermon at the kitchen counter, Bible open, voice steady as he practiced lines about accountability and living in the light. I washed dishes and nodded at the right moments. He kissed my cheek and said he was proud of me for being patient with him. I smiled. Sunday morning, the church was full. Youth Sunday. The kids sat together near the front, laughing, whispering, looking up at Luke like he hung the stars. I sat alone in my usual seat. The service began, like always: worship songs, announcements, smiles. Luke stood to speak, microphone clipped to his collar, Bible in hand. He had just said the words, "We're called to be examples," when movement caught my eye. From the side aisle, the elder board stood up, all 6 of them, together. That never happened. A murmur rippled through the room. Luke hesitated, then smiled, confused. "Gentlemen," he said lightly. Elder Thomas, the oldest among them, stepped forward. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. He took the microphone from Luke's lapel with deliberate care. "Luke," he said, voice breaking, amplified through the sanctuary, "we need you to step down from the platform." Silence fell like a physical weight. Luke laughed once, a sharp sound. "What's going on?" Elder Thomas swallowed. "Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties. Please come with us." The room erupted. Whispers, gasps. A teenager started crying. Luke's eyes searched the crowd, landed on me. For the first time, fear cracked through his composure. "Mara," he said into the microphone still clipped to his shirt. I didn't stand. I didn't speak. I just met his gaze and held it. He knew then. As the elders guided him off the stage, another elder addressed the congregation, voice unsteady, explaining that serious allegations had been substantiated and that the safety and integrity of the church required immediate action. They asked for prayer. They dismissed the service early. People stood in shock. Parents pulled children close. Friends whispered. I walked out alone. By Monday, the story was everywhere. Not the details, not at first, but enough. Luke was placed on administrative leave, then officially terminated. The church released a statement. Counseling services were offered. Parents demanded answers. Luke stayed in the house for 3 days, barely speaking, alternating between rage and despair. He accused me of betrayal, of ruining his calling, of not protecting him. I listened, without responding. On the fourth day, I packed a suitcase. I'm leaving, I told him calmly. You can't, he said, panic rising. This is when we need to fight for us. I looked at him, really looked, and felt nothing but clarity. You fought for yourself, I said. I'm just stepping out of the way. I moved into a small apartment across town, quiet, clean, mine. The divorce process was mercifully brief. Evidence does that. Luke tried to spin his story, to some friends, to his parents, to anyone who would listen. But the documents existed. The timeline existed. The truth didn't need me to defend it. Months later, I heard he'd moved away, taken a job outside ministry, somewhere no one knew him as Pastor Luke. Good. He deserved a chance to be honest with himself, if nothing else. As for me, I stayed. I rebuilt. I joined a support group for spouses of public figures. I learned how to trust my instincts again. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how it happened, if I wish I'd handled it privately, spared him the public fall. I tell them the same thing every time. I didn't expose him. I stopped protecting a lie. There's a difference. And when the truth finally stood up in that sanctuary, it didn't need anger or revenge. It just needed space.
You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.